Hello everyone, thanks very much for listening in to today's webinar, which is all about OneDrive versus SharePoint, as in what's the difference, how do I use them, and what are the best practices? Where do I put that file and when? We're also going to go into the basics of each. We'll kind of show off what the interface looks like, and when I say the interface, it depends on where you are, because you can actually access your OneDrive and your SharePoint files from a number of different places. You can access them in the app on the browser. You can access them through the File Explorer, the yellow folder that you have on your computer. That File Explorer can sync your libraries, and sometimes you're not allowed to sync a SharePoint library because they're just potentially so big in size. I'm going to show you some tips so that you can still connect it to your OneDrive as a shortcut. So that's a great alternative if your organization is a little bit nervous or you are about syncing libraries on SharePoint that could be really big in size. I'm also going to go into another way to access your SharePoint and OneDrive files, which is using Teams. Now, you might not be a Teams user if you're listening in or just going to spend some time in there, but I think it's helpful because it's a great way to almost realize how easy it is to work with your files almost in line to whatever conversation you're having, whether it's a chat or a post, or even if it's a plan or task. And you can really reach out to these connected services, which are SharePoint and OneDrive. They are in the cloud. If we think about the magic cloud, which is a safe and secure place where our files are stored, they're just off-site. So if you're switching from something that's like a on-site, like on-premise server, maybe in the back room or in the basement or something, and everything's kind of been on an H drive or an S drive. This is the newer way to work with those types of files. If you've got shared documents for your whole company, or you have some personal documents, maybe drafts or just personal work stuff that you don't need everyone to see, it's private, you can still share it though if you want to. So think about, we're going to go into the differences and how they're alike and so on, but you can invite others and you get different choices. I mean, you can have people view only, you can have them review, you can have them edit. Think of OneDrive as your personal place, and we'll explore this more, but SharePoint's going to be more of the group, whether it's a team or a project, or sometimes your whole organization. And yes, you can share with people internally and externally, as long as they're trusted, and there are a lot of different ways that we can share. There are some new features that I think are cool, worth mentioning if you've been using these for a while. You can customize the folder color now, which is kind of neat. Everyone's going to see it that way. You also have easy ways to find not only files, but people and meetings. If you use Teams and you use Teams meetings, they're really well integrated into the whole Microsoft 365 experience, which is cool because you can quickly and easily find your stuff, but there's a new view, and there's also a For You section. And that will combine anything you have permission to, whether it's SharePoint or OneDrive, which is nice because sometimes if you don't really remember where that file is, we can lean on things like these new views, which are designed to make it easier, but also search. So we'll go into that as well. So first, let's talk about OneDrive for Business. And when I say, I'm going to refer to it as OneDrive because it's shorter. OneDrive has a couple of different modalities, I suppose. We have the one for business, which is likely what you're using, or OneDrive for education. But if you have an MSN or Microsoft or Hotmail, email address, Xbox, anything Microsoft related for an email, everybody gets a OneDrive. It's kind of like on Google. Like if you have a Gmail account, you have a Drive and you have some free space on there. It's like 5 gigabytes, but at work, the one we're talking about today, you get like a terabyte. It's huge. You get tons of space. So it is a private workspace. Think of it as my files, like my documents in the cloud. So if you had on your local PC a folder called My Documents, now it's just going to be OneDrive, and you're going to see likely the blue cloud icon. And if you have a bunch of files on your desktop just hanging out, they're not necessarily backed up. So they're still your documents, but we want to put them in a safe space. So we've got just that mentality of these are mine. I can share them if I want to. Why would I use OneDrive? It's really good for drafting. Like say you're writing a blog or you're redoing some forms you might have. You can draft them there. You can have personal files like pay stubs and all that kind of stuff. But then when you want to invite other people to maybe proof it or just take another pass or whatever it might be, add to it, you can share that. And then anybody can access these as long as you say via their mobile device or on the desktop or on the web. So I was starting to tell you about all these different ways that you can access them. That makes it easier for the collaboration part, even though those files are private. I would say a lot of times I start in OneDrive and then I move them to SharePoint later on. Super easy to do. You can use the copy or move feature, and you have all of the collaborative stuff that's accessible across Microsoft 365, which is great. You can use it with when I say use it, you can use OneDrive with other apps like Planner, like Approvals, like OneNote. And again, you can use the copy or share or copy or move buttons and move things around later on. Then, additionally, you can use Teams to make it even easier if you want to. As far as SharePoint goes, this is not the private space. This is more of a collaboration workspace. So OneDrive's like my files, and SharePoint's like the Teams files. That could be project team, a whole department. It depends. That's going to be a place where you can store files. They're easy to update, and you can publish documents there that are shared on varying levels, which is great because that means you can either have something that's just viewable, like a newsletter or forms that people need to download for benefits enrollment. And you can imagine it's a great repository for when people say, where do I get that document? The answer a lot of times, SharePoint. But if you're building up on them and you're working, it is built for collaboration. So you can co-author, collaborate from anywhere. Now, you can do this on OneDrive as well. Typically, you wouldn't share something in its final place from your OneDrive if it's for everyone. A lot of times you want to move it to SharePoint because it's a little bit more powerful in its metadata and the way that it's managed permissions-wise. SharePoint documents are everyone's stuff. I mentioned, where do I find that document? Where's that info? Because SharePoint's a lot more than just documents. But we are talking about that today. As far as permissions, who controls it? OneDrive, it's you. SharePoint could be you if you're an owner of it, but it is managed and controlled, we're calling it by the organization, because you could have several different owners. And I mentioned SharePoint's a lot more than just files. It's a company, an enterprise tool, and you can have access to things like intranet portals. You can have shared calendars, task lists. That could be Planner, To-Do, news, pages. I mean, there's tons of stuff that you can do in here. And again, connect it to Teams, which makes it even better. Now, Teams can't really live without SharePoint. Teams does lay on top of OneDrive and SharePoint in a way. It's kind of social media in a way. It feels that way because it brings everything together. People can interact. You can have chats where you can share files really easily. And if you drag and drop a file into a chat or a post, it's got to put it somewhere. That typically in a chat's going to be your OneDrive, and in a post for the group, that's going to be SharePoint. So there are different ways that you can kind of approach how you're going to share your files. But the idea is that with Teams, it's going to be the place where the work is happening. I mean, that's going to be different channels that are actually going to be different subfolders on a SharePoint site. Each channel is a subfolder. And that makes it really easy because SharePoint's going to be the platform for Teams. So to repeat myself, Teams doesn't have a place to put your files. So if you're asking, or if someone's asking, where do I put that file? SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams? Well, it's really just SharePoint or OneDrive. You can't have a team in Teams unless you have a SharePoint site. It needs that as its structure, as its backbone. And then from there, people could consume documents, let's say, in the Teams environment or on the web in the SharePoint environment. The channels in Teams are structured in such a way that all the files associated with it, kind of by topic, are in subfolders. That's great, because then when you go to the SharePoint environment, you can see everything in the same structure, same look and feel. It's actually really nice. You can be a little more flexible, and you're a lot more productive that way. So why don't we jump right into some of the things, just to kind of do a demo. We've got a few minutes. I wanted to kind of give you that background. What is it? How are we going to access it? What's the best way? So what I'm going to do is start. You can do this too if you wanted to load it up on another window. Sometimes this is a great place to start, which is at Microsoft365.com. You could also go to office.com. It's going to be the same thing. It points you there. This is a great experience for using OneDrive and SharePoint kind of in concert, because it puts everything together, but you have the opportunity to separate them if you want to. From this landing page, again, I really like this. It's received a lot of updates recently, which I like. We have recommended content on the top. These are going to be all sorts of different files. They're going to be basically any type that you're working with. It could be even plans and planner. You can see the little icons here. And it gives you activity. It uses AI a lot, so it's giving you recommendations. It's knowing which files you work on and who you're working together with. It'll even capture things. Let me go back one. It'll even capture things like your meetings. So it's tying everything together. Teams, meetings, OneDrive, SharePoint, and it also gives you activity like this equipment checkout one Excel doc. Here's some good information. You shared this in a Teams chat. That's awesome. So I can click on that, open it up, and I'm working with it in Excel online. Now, in this experience, what we're seeing with this Microsoft365.com homepage is an opportunity to use some of the web apps. So most of us are going to have the full version kind of installed on our computer. Like we have that full install. But since you're signed in, you can actually use, work with, share, update those files from basically like 4 different places. It depends on your workflow. As long as it's stored in the specified location, whether it's OneDrive or SharePoint, you can get to it and work with it and share it from pretty much anywhere. So let's back it up a click. Get out of that. That was an example of just quickly getting to something on the quick access area. This is on home. There's a button here, a tile, which is my content. If you click there, it's going to give you a more focused look at SharePoint and OneDrive. This is all content that you have permission to. So with this, it can be everything. That can be a little overwhelming sometimes, especially if you're not sure or haven't had a chance to check this out much. But it's got everything from lists to, like on SharePoint, OneNote notebooks, meetings, even loop components, things like that. I like that because, again, I can just quickly go find stuff. We have recently opened. That's handy because if you're ever confused about, again, where things are, just go to the recently opened, and usually you're going to find it there. With OneDrive, with SharePoint, there's a lot of sharing. And if you click on the Shared tab right here, this is going to show you things that either you've shared or other people have shared. So you can see Dan shared this, and he mentioned me. And then we can see Dave shared this, Alex shared this, I shared these other things. There's a lot of context given when you look at the different columns, because this activity column is newer and very helpful. And the shared by is great, because if someone says, I shared this file with you like a month ago, you can't find it, you can go to shared and just start typing it in, like ABC. Oh yeah, Dan, there it is. I'm in there now, right? Here I am opening Word, and we've got this blog. Now this is using Word on the web, which is great if you just need to make quick edits. But in OneDrive or SharePoint, no matter what, you really want to kind of pick how you want it to open. You can set the default to open up in the full version. You can also click on this editing button pretty much any time when you have a file open on the web and open in the desktop app. If I do that, there we go. It literally launches it in my full version. So at this moment, I'm using my OneDrive, accessing that file. Of course, it's going to ask you to sign in. We're going to skip that for now. Practice environment. And we can even see things like app mentions, and you can communicate with each other in the comments. We can do that because we're in that SharePoint environment or that OneDrive environment. That's just a quick look at that. I'm going to go back. And I mentioned you can browse by people and meetings now. That's great because files that you're working on with these people are going to show up here. And then the meetings you're having that could include files are going to be showing up here. Of course, it's still searching for ABC. There we go. I like this meetings area because then I can browse by meeting and I can see any files or anything that's associated. And it doesn't matter if it's in SharePoint or OneDrive. So let's check out the OneDrive app. I'm going to click on the app launcher, click on OneDrive. So keep in mind, what I just showed you was a broader look at combining SharePoint and OneDrive files that you're working on likely or have been shared with you, and it gives you a quick way to get to them. If you want to go to just OneDrive, you can do that here. We've got the OneDrive app. And the way I got here was by clicking on the app launcher and then choosing OneDrive. If you don't see it, you can click on Explore All Your Apps. It's probably going to be there though, and then pin it. A lot of times your organization will set that up for you. Got a good question. What's the most efficient way to move a departed employee's OneDrive content to someone else's, like a supervisor's OneDrive when they leave? Oh, that's a good question, actually. Right now we have the OneDrive that's just for me. Nobody else can see this right now except for me. And then I can choose to share those if I want to. If somebody leaves an organization, or if you leave, all your files are still there. All of your files are still there and they're shared. That's something that an admin person would have to do unless that person was kind of setting up, in that 2 weeks or whatever. What they can do is actually move those files themselves and then maybe move it to a SharePoint location. That might be a good way. I'm going to show you how we can use the move or copy feature, and I think that is kind of what you're getting at. We'll use that feature. Here I'm on home, and we'll do that right now. It helps kind of describe some of these features. So again, thanks for asking that question. We have in my OneDrive, I can see my files. Everything as in folders, and some of them are colorful, and then your files. There are a couple of different columns here. We have name, which you can sort, and you can do some settings. Modified by file size, and so on. This sharing one is helpful because it tells you that they're private unless you've shared them, and then it's going to give you the icon of people, and it's going to read shared. And this is also a link. So if you're in your OneDrive and you wanted to share something that's private, like this ABC document, what I'm going to do is just show you what happens when you click on this. When you do that, it immediately brings up the Manage Access dialog. Nobody can see this yet. People one, just me. It's not been shared. You can start sharing, and you can actually add people to your OneDrive file here if you wanted to. So I'm going to add Alex. And if I wanted to add somebody externally, I'm going to do myself in my work email. And what it does, it tells me that this person, me, is outside of the organization. So you can share files externally if you'd like to. It's possible, but you just want to pay attention to some of the options in OneDrive. I'm going to click on the pencil, and I can immediately begin choosing how that person's going to use it. So they can edit. Like if I want Alex to make changes and stuff, choose that one. Can view only, and you can set it so they can't even download it. They can just view it, but they can't download. So you can really control freak these documents if you want to. But people externally can edit. That's possible too. So you can add a message if you want to, and you can do a couple things. You can either copy the link and then share it, or you can just send that invite. Now, I think it's important though to click on this gear, because that's going to unlock the share with or the share the link with section. Right now, by default, anyone can sign in and use this file, and they can edit because that's the way it's set up. You could have it changed to people just that you work with, or people who already have access if you want to reshare a link, or people you choose. And that's going to be the most common one if you want to share externally. So say I want to share externally with someone they can edit. That's where we would begin typing in their name and sharing it. So what we do is just send that off. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'm going to click share, and it hasn't been shared yet. We're going to just do that manage access. And I'm going to do people you choose. Sorry, that disappeared. I just want to bring it back up again. We're just going to share with Alex, and I'm going to send the invite that way. He's going to get an email, and then he can have access. That's great. We can see the icon here, the link changed to shared, and it tells me that I shared that with him. Now, let's say we work on this document, and everything's kind of good to go. Let's open up Alex's view. Let's pretend we're Alex. So this is what it looks like from another person's point of view. Here's Outlook. He's going to get that email. There we go. John invited you to access a file. Here's the document. It looks pretty legit. It's going to have your company logo and Microsoft and stuff. So he can open that right here, and he's in. He gets that view, and he can tell that it's on my OneDrive. But he doesn't have permission to rename it though, but he can check out the version history to see some of the changes that maybe I've made or others have made. And then you can always restore that. But that's awesome. That's a great way to just easily share a document. Now check this out. If I go in the document, and there's Alex, he can see where I am. And this is I can't type. Look, this is an example of co-authoring. So I can see, this is my side, where Alex is, and then he can see exactly where I am. Again, pretty awesome. We can see exactly where, like up on the top here, Alex is in there, and I can even go to location where he is, and you see people working in that document at the same time. I like that. I use that one quite a bit at work. So let's say Alex and I are done working with this document, and I want to move it to SharePoint. So let's address one of the questions that we had. I'm going to click on the three dots. Now this also provides us with a look at all the different things that you can do with your OneDrive documents, or SharePoint even. But there's this move to and copy to. So if I click on this, if I wanted to move a file or a folder to a different location, I can move it somewhere else on my own OneDrive, like a different folder in there. Or I can move it to a project, for example. Like say I want to move it to a SharePoint team, and I'm going to put it just in general. I'm going to move that file there completely. It does this little thing. So you can do that with files or folders. Keep in mind though, if you do that with large amounts, sometimes the metadata will get zeroed out. Like if you moved a previous employee, like all their stuff to another location, it's going to look like you were the last one who did it, or it was your document. So with OneDrive, it's easy to share. I showed you one method, which was just clicking on the little link here. You can find that share icon pretty much anywhere and click that, and it's going to give you that consistent look and feel on the link settings and what you want to do with it. It's also a good place to go check to see, who has access to what. It's going to be the same experience. I'm going to go to SharePoint here. It's going to be the same experience if you're in a SharePoint site and you're in a document library. This is going to be the repository for that stuff. Because here we have all of the different folders. Remember I said I put that in general? There it is. That's the folder, or excuse me, that's the file. I had moved it to this location. That's just one example. And now 22 people can see that. All of these members instantly have permission. So I don't have to worry about one-off permissions anymore with that. Other questions about, like if you wanted to migrate stuff, I would suggest if you want to upload files or something, you can drag and drop them in. That's possible too. But if it's larger stuff, like they're just, gigabytes and gigabytes, tons of files. Sometimes you might have another organization help you do that, but that's a decision you can make. But you saw how easy it is. Anything you can add, you can copy or move. You can absolutely do that. Dragging and dropping or clicking the upload button are going to be a couple ways to do that. I also have a video series, by the way, which is all about saving and sharing your OneDrive documents and your SharePoint documents in all the different ways. So please be sure to check that out. I just wanted to show you an example of a synced OneDrive. So this is my File Explorer, and we can see this new column, which is status. And if we do that, like here's an itinerary. I've shared that. I can tell because of the share icon. And if I open it from here, you can see that little icon changed. It changed right there. And here's the document. And I can use it in my full version of Excel if I want to. I love it. I can share from there and so on. But now I can use this offline. See the status icon? It's no longer just in the cloud. It's actually synced to my computer. And anytime you right-click on these, you're going to get some options. If you're using Windows 10, it's going to look like this probably. And you're going to have a new little group in the middle. And it's going to be always keep on this device maybe. If you do that, the icon changes and it's going to be on your device. So if you're offline, you're on a plane, you can still work with it. And then when you go back online, it's going to sync. If it's taking up too much space, you can free up space. And then from here, you can manage in all the different ways that we saw in the app. If you want to view it online, because sometimes people bounce back and forth between using File Explorer and using the browser, it's easy to just click and then you can go find where that document lives. The last thing I wanted to show is here in Teams. If you click on the OneDrive tile, this is the place in Teams to see all of your files. And all of the things that we talked about already, as far as my files, shared files, and so on, those are all here in a view. So we can skip having to go out to that browser and skip having to go to Microsoft365.com if we just use this OneDrive tile. We can see everything. It not only includes our OneDrive, but also our SharePoint stuff. So if I go to that Mark a Project Team, go into one of the folders, look, there's that document. Just another example of how quick and easy it is to get around in here. All right, one final thing. Somebody's asking a question about this. If you want to change the color of your folder, just click on the three dots and we've got folder color down here, which you can change. There we go. All right, well, everyone, thanks very much. That was a quick half hour to basically go through OneDrive, SharePoint, talk about the differences, kind of show you what it looks like on the screen. Also, we've got tons of other videos and resources. This was a quick 30 minutes, though we talk about OneDrive for example, for hours at a time. So please check it out. Pay attention to that OneDrive file. I think if you're a Teams user, this is going to be the easiest place to get to what you need. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. If you have additional questions, I'm going to stick around, but thanks. Just to follow up, there is one question about, and I don't think I answered it correctly before, old folders that contain historic information necessary for possible future use, should they be stored in SharePoint as opposed to an S drive, for example? I would suggest, if your organization is going fully into it, to like the cloud and Teams and stuff, is to store it in SharePoint, because then you have that version control, you have a single version of that document. It's always up to date. That can be a great thing to do, because then your metadata is going to be correct. And again, there's a lot of safety in knowing that it's the correct version. And the same thing applies for if you're emailing it. So I'd recommend, a lot of companies, in fact, are getting rid of like an S drive and using the SharePoint environment as their document repository. That's what we do. I like it a lot because then I can get to documents from anywhere. It makes it a lot easier, and I know it's safe. Another question, do you have a newer version of Teams, as I do not see OneDrive as an option? No, yeah, I probably do. And if you have a slightly different version, it's probably called Files. The tile that you'll see on the side is Files. And if you don't see that right away, you might have to just click on the three dots here and find that app. But it was just renamed. So that might be what you're seeing. Okay, now you do see it. I didn't even see your next question there. Is it possible to get a copy of this recorded webinar to share with my staff in my department? Absolutely. This was recorded and it's going to be available in the library soon. And we also have a lot of other webinars, examples, even granular videos on how to do each specific task. Today was an overview, like OneDrive versus SharePoint. It wasn't necessarily a how to do everything because we only had 30 minutes, but I wanted to point you to those resources. Yes, this is recorded. We're going to get a copy up, and you're going to get an email probably from Charlie, and then you can share that with your work friends / colleagues. Totally. Okay, well, you're welcome. Again, thanks everyone for taking the time to just take a look at the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint and some different ways that you can get to that. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.